Welcome, everyone. It is 6 o'clock on the dot, and I will call this first meeting of the new year of the Lunenburg Town Council to order. I hope everyone had a good holiday. I would also like to acknowledge that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. And the first order of business we have for tonight is a draft motion to approve our agenda, with the addition of a proposed in-camera agenda item related to the potential sale of town property at 37 Tannery Road. Just for everyone's procedural knowledge, late-breaking items according to our procedures policy require a 2/3 majority to be added at the meeting time. So we'll just take note. I don't think it's going to be particularly controversial. So I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda. Moved by Councillor Sanford, seconded by Councillor Birtles. All those in, is there any discussion? Any errors or omissions to note? Any additions, deletions? Seeing nothing. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. That takes us on to the meeting minutes of December 8th. And I will look for somebody to move to approve those. Moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Duggan. Are there any errors or omissions in the minutes to note? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. We have no public hearings and presentations. We have 3 pieces of correspondence, one from the Offshore Petroleum Board, Property Value Services Corporation, and the Board of Trade, with a letter of appreciation for the town's holiday lighting activities. Are there any questions related to that correspondence? Seeing none. That takes us on to unfinished business. And the first item we have under unfinished business are committee appointments under corporate services. So there's a draft motion there, but do these, I'll look to the clerk, do these need to be done individually? And there are some that are outstanding, correct? Okay. Okay. We will do these individually then. We'll start with the Planning Advisory Committee citizen appointment, and I'll look to the chair to make a motion in that regard. I believe there's a recommended appointment there. Councillor Sam? Yeah. Sorry, I think some of the people in the gallery can't hear. Maybe you could take your mask off and turn your mic on. Jerry. Ross.
So I'd like to move the council accept the appointment of Jerry Ralston to the Planning Advisory Committee.
So there's a motion moved by Councillor Sanford as the Planning Advisory Committee Chair that Jerry Ralston be appointed as a citizen representative on the Planning Advisory Committee. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Birtles was quickest on the draw. Is there any discussion or debate about that appointment, that proposed appointment? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. That takes us on to the Heritage Advisory Committee, and I believe there's a recommendation there as well.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to move that Virginia Stephen be accepted as the vacancy on the Heritage Advisory Committee.
Okay, that is moved by Councillor Ernst and seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Is there any discussion or debate related to that proposed appointment? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Now, I believe there are a couple outstanding external appointments, and if Ms. Renton, if you could just list them for us.
Thank you, Your Worship. There are
Sorry to interrupt, Ms. Renton. Could you use your mic?
oh, sorry.
And it goes into the online feed. So if everybody could remember to turn your mics on.
Oh, sorry about that. I thought I had it on. There are 3 vacancies on common lands, Your Worship, and that's the organization that oversees a parcel of land in the Blue Rocks area, or sorry, on Heckman's Island rather. And there's 2 councillor vacancies, and there's one that was traditionally filled by the county judge. but we generally make that appointment. As well, we have potentially the Lunenburg Harbor Health Advisory Group, 2 vacancies to that. And the next is, I believe there may be an upcoming vacancy on the Western Regional Housing Authority you mentioned. We don't have formal notice of that, but I understand that might be coming up. And for that, Your Worship, we make a nomination to the provincial government and they consider that. And then the final one being the South Shore Regional Library Board, Your Worship. It could be a council member or a citizen representative who serves on that board for the community.
Okay, so just in the interest of getting committee positions filled, I'm going to look to council to see if there's any interest in occupying a few of those appointments, or if people would like to mull it over. I think this is something that is not pressing and that could be deferred until our next meeting. So is there anybody? All right, seeing none, we'll let everybody think it over and dispose of this at our January 26th meeting. Next, we have the proposed revised sale, reproduction, use of the town's flag and logo policy. Just to prevent these requests from coming to council in future, there's a draft motion, and I would look if anybody has questions or if it's anybody's pleasure to move that motion. Moved by the deputy mayor. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Ernst. Is there any discussion or debate? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. The next item of business is a budget 2020-21 variance report to November 30th. There's a staff information report, and we'll give Ms. Dagley 5 minutes or so to kindly recap that for us.
Thank you, Your Worship. As noted on the agenda, this is an information report for council. The pages 1 through 8 do provide you an update on all the various capital projects that are ongoing. Page 9 is a summary of the budget and year-to-date actuals by department. And on page 10, there is a summary of the transfer tax, tax receivables, parking meter, and now you'll note that we will start monitoring the snow and ice control for the rest of the fiscal year as that weather has arrived. I'm pleased to answer any questions that council have. I don't have anything to a particular note to bring to your attention this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Dagley. The deputy mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Lisa. Lisa, not all our capital projects will be fulfilled this year. Is that correct?
There is potential for some that will need to be carried over, yes.
Do you think, like, well, I would think that, you know, if we could like highlight that and, you know, with just, you know, in pink or blue or something, just to say, you know, in all likelihood, and then you just put a note at the bottom, these won't get completed, you know, or what are the various reasons maybe?
That would be certainly something
Yeah.
that we could accommodate for the next report. Yep.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
We've been speaking about some of the one in particular already today, just that we would need to flag it for your attention for
Yeah.
the next report.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, any further questions on the variance report? Last call. Seeing none, we will move on. There are a Heritage Advisory Committee meeting minutes, but there are no recommendations coming from those. That takes us on to new business under corporate services. The proclamation request to declare February 2021 African Heritage Month, and there was a schedule and draft motion for that. Does anyone have any questions, or is it anybody's pleasure to move that motion? Moved by Councillor Halverson, seconded by Councillor Duggan. Is there any discussion or debate? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. And we will so proclaim that February 2021 be African Heritage Month. And that's part of a broader provincial initiative. That takes us on to item 2, council and committee meetings, notices of motion, writing guide, staff report, and draft motion. This was something that staff had prepared at my request in the interest of having good process that's both open and formal and respectful of other councillors. There's a report there. Ms. Renton, did you want to recap the report briefly for us? and then we'll open the floor to questions in the motion.
I will certainly endeavor to do so, Your Worship, but I think you summarized it very well. The report guide is, or I should say the notice of motion guide, I beg your pardon, is premised on a similar format we use for staff reports. So the substance of the three templates that are provided, the first one is a request for decision, and that approximates a staff report format. And we provide a sample for you with an indication of the timeline by which that should be filed for inclusion on an agenda. And that would be 2 Wednesdays before a meeting. So there's adequate time to review and include any kind of draft motion in an annotated agenda. There's also a template provided for a request for report and recommendation. And that's when you are considering requesting a staff report and providing some background information and rationale for making that request. The final and third one is a request for information report, and much similar to its name or title, it is when you are seeking information that's not readily accessible by staff. It might take some research time and effort, maybe a collaborative effort of a couple of staff members to prepare. So you are asking council in advance and in preparation for an upcoming meeting to consider approving that request to staff to prepare such a report for consideration at a subsequent meeting. I should note as well, my understanding is the intention is also to use this at committee meetings. So if it is adopted, there should be some familiarization with committee members about the intention and the process. And I think, as the mayor said, it speaks very well to meeting efficiency, so people can, all participants for that matter, can come as best prepared as possible. There is a draft motion, Your Worship, that has been prepared, and I should note as well that I think it speaks well to the governance strategic direction provided in your comprehensive community plan.
Thank you, Ms. Renton. Are there any questions about that? Seeing none, is it anyone's pleasure to move that that guide be adopted? Moved by Councillor Sanford, seconded by Councillor Birtles. Is there any discussion or debate on that question? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And I would just note that this is part of a broader set, as we've all seen since we've taken office, of meeting planning and process initiatives that we've undertaken. So this is, we've had ones before this, and there will be, I'm sure, more to come after. That takes us on to, speaking of much of the same, requested amendments to the guide for staff, writing staff reports for council and committee meetings. There's a staff report and draft motion that was drafted by Ms. Renton, so perhaps Ms. Renton could speak to that.
Thank you as well, Your Worship. And I should say at the outset, I think staff are very supportive of the proposed amendments to the document that were requested and have been prepared for your consideration. I think some of the challenges that are addressed in the report, though, relate more to timing of and scheduling of meetings. So how achievable some of the requested amendments are. The first request that's outlined, and perhaps also by way of background, I should say, is this staff report writing guide has been in place for about a year now, and I think it's been very helpful for all concerned. It's helped to clarify the general content of staff reports, the format, so as you see, sort of the facts and backgrounds and issues and options analysis, and really encouraging, I know council favorably views when multiple options are provided and evaluated. You know, there might be 3 options, 2 of which might not really be valid, but at least they are analyzed, and that is clarified for the decision makers, such as yourselves and committee members. We speak as well to financial impact, the strategic plan relevance, and now with the updated comprehensive community plan. And finally, an expanded recommendation, which, as you see from your agenda this evening, includes a draft motion. And I think we can all agree that's been a very effective tool. I think you're probably leaders in the province in putting forward that format for which you're commended, certainly by staff. I think it helps to focus the decision-making process. So some of the items that we wanted to note in the staff report as well relate to the earlier distribution deadlines. And they are quite achievable, but it's if there's, where we run into some issues, if there's overlapping or very, or I should say consecutive meetings or tight timeframes between meetings. So if staff reports typically have to be to myself as a CAO to review, as is one of my obligations under the Municipal Government Act, by 2 Wednesdays before a meeting, and I am to have a draft agenda to the mayor and the deputy mayor by that Friday, which is in effect well in advance or over a week before a meeting, typically. There is often very little time to prepare that draft agenda. So if you took this evening's meeting as an example, and your January 26th council and perhaps council in camera meeting, it means that when the minutes are finished this evening and we are readying for the meeting on January 26th, there really has to be an agenda prepared by this Friday at the close of business. And that means that all staff reports with the draft motions have to be received in full and incorporated in that annotated agenda. So that, along with preparing the minutes and assigning the work with which Ms. McCollum and I typically do after a council meeting, does not leave a lot of time. And if there's committee meetings that, Heritage or Planning or other groups that are meeting, it can present further time constraints. So we note that in the report. I think that's dealing with the timelines. The mayor also requested, and I think wisely so, a template for a report that deals with section 33 or 32, I beg your pardon, of the Municipal Government Act, where a manager, or it could be really any staff member for that matter, I guess, could write a report that is contrary to the chief administrative officer. It empowers them and authorizes them to write a report that may differ perhaps with an opinion that I am providing or a set of facts that they differ with. So a template is provided there as well. There is a notation in the report as well, you'll see under the issue and options analysis, and it's not meant to be a contrarian point of view, but seeking clarification rather as to what is meant by staff report writing requirements, perhaps for all substantive matters. I mean, generally we have a sense of what that might entail, but we've had some interesting discussions to try and clarify what that might be. And I think particularly for new staff, if we have an enabling policy, let's say, in the background already, does council really require a report like that? Again, it's not a question of not wanting to assist council in the decision-making process by providing a report, but rather workload. So trying to determine, is an agenda item perhaps report worthy, and if so, what might be the triggering mechanisms for that? Is it a case where maybe there's not a policy behind it or a practice? If things are rather straightforward, do you really need a report for it? So some direction on that might be helpful for all concerned. There is also an additional proviso that the mayor and deputy mayor had requested regarding late staff reports, and I think mention was made of that already this evening, to clarify that if they are late, unless they are urgent, typically they would be referred to the next meeting. I think staff are generally very disciplined about making sure reports are prepared on time. We have a very competent team, but there are times, even for an agenda item you have later this evening, where things come in late and they really could be considered urgent. So it provides a mechanism by which you can address those sorts of things. Should I pause, Your Worship, to see if there's any questions at this time before I...
Yeah, I think that's all right. So this is, again, part of the broader series of initiatives to make council and committee meeting deliberations efficient and effective and comprehensive, and to make sure that everybody is able to prepare themselves. Are there any questions for Ms. Renton? Councillor Halvis.
Yes, through to Ms. Renton, from Your Worship. You pointed out the issue that would take place if the fact that the agenda items need to come to you by this Friday, coming from out of this meeting. What is the likelihood then if we have some piece of business arising to this meeting that needs to be addressed at the next council session? Will that be feasible, or will that just be situation by situation?
Well, Your Worship, it could be difficult, particularly if an additional staff report is needed. So I guess there'd be hopefully the understanding that it could roll over to your February meeting. Because yeah, that would be a very tight time frame to try and prepare a report. And again, it's in principle, staff fully support what is being requested. I think they're very sound amendments that are being considered. It's just to try and ensure we can achieve them realistically.
Yeah, and again, just to continue on there. It's not I'm not trying to put you guys in a bad position. It's more about just managing our expectations as a council from staff. So if we understand that the workload may be too much, we just have to plan accordingly. So that's fine. Thank you.
Any further questions? So there's, I mean, the report is in draft form, subject to, as I understand it, the points that are listed, so it would not be ready to be prepared to be voted on tonight in the absence of clear direction. I'm just wondering, is council, if the deputy mayor, the CEO, and myself take this away and come back with a clearer ask at the next meeting, is that acceptable to everyone? Okay. So we will assume that that's deferred by unanimous consent to the meeting on January 26th. The last item we have is the Protective Services Committee meeting, Protective Services Committee recommendation about the fire department request to withdraw $5,000 from the joint account for charitable donation funds, purchase an unbudgeted capital item of a heat pump for the fire hall. There is a draft motion for that. If anybody has any questions, the fire hall superintendent, the CAO are here. Any questions on that? Seeing none, is it anybody's pleasure to move that motion? Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Sanford. Is there any discussion or debate? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. That takes us to item 10, a motion moved and seconded to meet in camera pursuant to Section 22 of the Municipal Government Act to include the listed items. Is there a motion for that? Moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Duggan. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried, and with Council's unanimous consent, we will take a 10-minute recess.